God.
Look at all the stuff you have.
It's like, they're speechless.
I'm Alex Fazzino.
And I'm Judy Espinoza.
It's hard to find items that we don't have.
20 years worth of collecting. It's pretty big.
The realtor would say, well, you know, what are you looking for? And we say, well, we either need like a big attic area or we need like 5 bedrooms. 5 bedrooms, do you have kids? And we would say, we have 4 boys, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. This flight bag was acquired from the chauffeur for the Beatles. There's not much that got away. It's a Ringo on a bus past JFK. He comes up to us and he goes, hello, hello, peace and love your coat.
Paul, that was a different story.
I said, Sir Paul, I said, have you heard of a bucket list? And he goes, sure.
Alex had actually drawn up a bucket list, and it had one item on it, and it was to meet Sir Paul McCartney.
And with your help, I can get that completed. And he goes, well, let's have a look. We have devoted and dedicated our love and passion for the Beatles. It's not really, not only is it about the collectible part and the merchandising and the records, but we just love everything about the Beatles. They make us happy. They did so much in such a short period.
They all have their individual personalities that came together just beautifully.
They're all so different, right? Paul, the cute one.
Smart as can be.
John, very political, always kind of speaking his mind.
He was a lot more serious, even though he had his quirkiness about him.
Ringo was always like the Yogi Berra of music, was always the fun, bumbling one.
George is quiet. He's quiet. He doesn't say a lot, but when he sings, it's so beautiful and so Beatlesque. He blends in beautifully. We met in 2001, luckily on a blind date.
Go on a blind date. It can be very, very good for you. When Judy and I first met, I had purchased a house and I had no furniture, nothing to put in it. Judy had all the stuff to put in the house. So we said, hey, you've got a house, I've got all this stuff, let's put it together. Well, then we also found that we started to want to go shopping, to kind of put some things together that were more about us.
It's so wonderful to know that people have a passion, and we've got many, many friends with different passions.
My passion?
The Beatles.
That's our passion, or as my friend says, my obsession.
It went from passion to obsession.
I'm Alex Fazzino.
And I'm Judy Espinoza.
Welcome to Beatletown, Houston. This is the collector's version of Beetlemania. Well, one day, I went into one of the bookstores, local bookstores, and this little girl had a pin. And the pin was the Beatles. It was like a Hard Day's Night pin. And I said, hey, I like your pin. She goes, oh, I got it from a really cool record store around the corner. I went over there and I opened the door and I could not believe what I found, because up to that point, everything we had been finding and collecting was pretty ratty. So I walk into this record store and they had all of this pristine collectible records of every kind. Well, of course, up on the wall was a Beatles 45 in a picture sleeve. And I called Judy and I said, honey, you've got to come see this. I said, this is just crazy. And that's when it all started to tell us that we needed to focus on one thing. And we picked the Beatles, and we needed to start focusing on high-end or collectible items. About 20 years ago, when Judy and I first got together,
Alex and I decided to take a trip to San Francisco. We're listening to music, and the Beatles come on the radio.
I said, wouldn't it be cool if they made Beatle bobbleheads?
And I thought, whoa, that's something to think about. I said, I'm not sure.
That's when she opened up the phone book and found a record store in Modesto, California.
Excuse me, we're visiting, from Texas, and we want to know if you would happen to know if they ever, made Beatle bobbleheads, or would you happen to have any Beatles memorabilia? We're very interested.
A lady on the phone says, yes, I have a set.
But to me, when she said that, that was destined.
So we whipped that car around.
We drove 3 hours to Modesto, California, to see these bobbleheads.
And they were in the kind of the higher 3 figures. We had never, ever spent that level of money on anything to collect. And we were discussing, we're like, oh my God, it's so much money. Well, we ended up pulling the trigger and we ended up buying these 8-inch bobbleheads, or nodders as they call them in the industry. And we realized from that point forward that there must be other memorabilia out there. In the first few years, the collection started to grow, and so the closet started to get full. And you could literally walk in the closet, and I had the records on the side, and the stereo down here, and the bobbleheads. It was, we thought we were big time. Well, we quickly realized from 2001 to 2005 that 5x5 closet was not going to cut it anymore. So we started to look for a new home. And so it's just the two of us. The realtor would say, well, what are you looking for? And we say, well, we either need like a big attic area or we need like 5 bedrooms. Oh, and they go, well, 5 bedrooms, do you have kids? And we would say, we have 4 boys, John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
20 years worth of collecting. It's pretty big.
We have 3 rooms upstairs. Our collection is out of sight, out of mind. When you come over to our home, you would have no idea that Beetlemania was up over your head. Once you get up top, you turn to the right, and we call that the appetizer room. And most people will walk into the appetizer room and do one of 2 reactions. They go, oh yeah, this is nice. Oh yeah, you got some stuff. Or other people go,
oh my God.
Look at all the stuff you have.
It's like they're speechless.
There's no hint of it whatsoever.
I can honestly say that if there are any holy grails in the Beatles memorabilia and in their vinyl, we probably have most of those.
And we quickly realized we got more room than stuff. So we started buying more stuff. The thing that makes this interesting is this flight bag was only handed out to the inner circle of the Beatles.
We got a hold of some catalogs that were put out by these authors that happen to be very good friends of ours. And displayed in the catalogs are a lot of the memorabilia that we didn't even know existed. So we started going by the catalog saying, well, we're going to look for this item, and we're going to look for this item. And we started basically on eBay. We started talking to people. We started attending the Beatles Fest. We got to know people, we got to know vendors, and it was all by talk. And so we had something to go on to grow our collection, and it was the catalog. But once we got every item in that catalog, then what? We started learning about other things that were out there and available. So it piqued our curiosity. And so we just continued to look and continued to ask. And it almost seemed like never ending.
This is probably the first ever released piece of memorabilia of the Beatles.
So we were up.
So there you have it.
Many late nights because we were following something that was being bid on eBay, or we were, showing interest. We were waiting for a phone call from somebody, say, hey, it has come available. Are you interested? And what are you willing to, to sacrifice to get this? I did most of the looking and searching, and he did the pain.
So Beetlemania here is probably somewhere between 850 to 1,000 items cataloged. It took about 12 years to really just fill the spaces. And it ranges from vinyl, LPs, picture sleeves, merchandising, memorabilia, autographs. I even have a personal item that was owned by John Lennon. This flight bag was acquired from Alf Bicknell, who was the chauffeur for the Beatles. It was a flight bag that John Lennon carried on tour. So this is probably the most personal item that I have of the Beatles, is a John Lennon flight bag. So I'm very proud to have it. It's hard to find items that we don't have. As a collector, it's one thing to buy a plastic toy guitar, but it's another thing to buy the same plastic toy guitar on the original backer card that you saw at the store. And it's another thing to find that toy guitar with the original backer card still wrapped. That's the stuff we like.
We knew that we were in bigger and better and pricier and a lot more valuable.
We look for items that are not like available. I mean, kids played with these items. And so what you want is you want the items that were unplayed with, right? So that's what we look for, which is why we have all these toys.
We're always looking. That hasn't stopped.
We have one item, only two known to exist. I have one. And I think you probably remember, it's like a little piece of plastic or cellophane, and it comes with a little piece of plastic like a pen, and it's called a magic slate. And you write your name, or you draw a picture, then you erase it and you write your name. We had been looking for that magic slate for 20 years and finally found one. And this was released in Germany, is the very first ever known recording of the Beatles. There's not much that got away. If truth be told, it's a Ringo on a bus past JFK. We have devoted and dedicated our love and passion for the Beatles. It's not really, not only is it about the collectible part and the merchandising and the records, but we just love everything about the Beatles. They make us happy.
Our passion is so grand.
The Ringo experience was fun.
There was an auction. It was a form of an auction where you could, it was a meet and greet is what it was. You bid on it to win and to meet him backstage before he went on for his concert. And so Alex decided to place a bid. And when it got to the very end, we got outbid. I was crying. I wanted to meet the Beatles so bad. I don't know if it was through prayer that night, my tears that I shed, or what it was, but the next day, Alex says that he checked his email. He received an email that said, "We know that you are one of the higher bidders too, and we decided to give the second highest bidder a chance to meet Ringo." And we were ecstatic. It was meant to be.
The young lady comes up to us and she goes, "You two will be the first one to meet Ringo when he comes down the hallway around the corner, but everyone else will be behind you, so, you know, he's gonna be moving along. Don't ask him to sign anything," and we knew that, he doesn't sign anymore. "And don't shake his hand." Got it. So he comes around the corner, he comes up to us. Judy's got this fabulous 60s swirly coat on. I mean, she's like rocking it, right? And he goes, "Hello, hello, peace and love your coat." And he hugs her, kisses her on the cheek. And then he comes to me and shakes my hand. And we're like, well, we were told not to do that. He was getting pulled in a lot of different directions. We had a good time, then went out, sat in the audience and listened to him play.
Paul, that was a different story.
Paul, whenever I'm having a bad day or a bad moment or whatever, I always think about the meet that I had with Paul.
And it happened yesterday. And I will forever, ever live that moment. It'll never go away. Paul, we worked on probably about 6 to 8 months before it was completely approved.
I started talking to my friend over in Liverpool, and very quietly and very, politely and respectfully started to kind of inquire about coming over and, what would the possibilities be to have an audience with Sir Paul.
It was destiny again for us.
So I get an email on Monday morning, and he goes, "I got great news." He goes, "Paul's agreed to meet you both, and it'll just be the two of you." And I tell you what, I couldn't breathe. It was just so much fun. I called Judy. She passed out at work. Good thing she's a nurse. There were plenty of doctors. They revived her. And I remember when she got home, I said, "Look, we leave in 2 weeks." I said, "We're going to go to the Galleria." I said, "We're going to pick out whatever we need to wear, and I don't want you to look at the price tag. I said, because we're meeting Sir Paul McCartney. So we did that, and it was fun. We were on cloud nine, right?
And that we were going to be in this room with this genius that it was just unimaginable. When we first walked in and I saw him, it just took my breath. I mean, it just did. I had to have Alex lead the way. I had to contain myself and regain my composure, because it was just like seeing something out of this world that I would have never ever imagined would have been possible.
He was the most engaging, most pleasant that he could be. We could tell that he did have his agenda to move along. And we were talking to him a little bit about Ed Sullivan, and he thanked us for making the effort to come over to the UK to meet him. And our friend was, telling us, he was trying to move the greet along a little bit. And he goes, Alex, did you bring something that you wanted Paul to sign? And I said, yes, I did. I said, Sir Paul, I said, have you heard of a bucket list? And he goes, sure.
Alex had actually drawn up a bucket list, and it had one item on it, and it was to meet Sir Paul McCartney.
And with your help, I can get that completed. And he goes, well, let's have a look.
He goes, we can do that.
So what's the date? And I tell him the date, and he writes the date. He signs his name. He puts in parentheses D-O-N-E, and he leans over and he goes, done.
There you go, lad. Thanks, it's done.
And I said, that's cool.
We floated through London and Liverpool the next couple of days that we were there, and we would sit at a restaurant and we'd say, if these people only knew who were with this morning, if they only knew.
If I had the collection memorabilia that I have now, and someone said, hey, you know what, I have an opportunity for you to meet Sir Paul McCartney one-on-one, but you might need to donate that piece or something, I'd say, sign me up. Music obviously is timeless. It's got a beat, it's poetic, it's creative, it's innovative, and it never seems to get old. So I think the genius behind the songwriting of Lennon and McCartney, also George.
Just the whole package, as you get to know them and all the different personalities of each individual Beatle, you start to learn how bright and how smart and how genius they were, and how they all came together. And I think it's just this thing of four guys meeting, probably unexpectedly, and making a one that is it's just created such a mania. We've enjoyed it. We're going to continue to enjoy it. We just, at this point, know that we want to continue to share it with our friends. We want to continue to talk about it. We want to continue to think about what we're going to do, with the collection as the days go by. But we're just gonna live it. We're gonna, continue to enjoy it. If you think about it, there's a lot of stuff up here.
I would love to see it never get broken up.
And that would take a lot of time.
I would love to try to educate folks on why it's collectible, how to enjoy it, what to focus on. I would love, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, I would love for a museum to want it.
And we're very aware of one museum that just recently opened up in Liverpool, and it's a Beatles museum, and so we've considered them.
Display everything in its entirety or switch it out as however they see fit. I would be perfectly fine with that. I think burdening our families with breaking it up, selling it, distributing it, some of it going out on the curb probably is not what we want. We would be more than happy to donate the thing. We also talked about, and this is actually kind of a fun thing, we also talked about doing a Beatles pop-up museum as a fundraiser.
Where we can move it around and people can come in and enjoy it and not have people coming into our own private space here at home.
Set up a spot for 2 or 3 months We've already talked to some friends of ours who would come in and kind of do appearances on the weekends, but all the proceeds, would go to, we have a couple of avenues that Paul's connected with and that Ringo's connected with, that we could sweeten the pot and say, hey, proceeds go to these organizations. We would like to see everyone enjoy this forever and ever.
The biggest thing that I want them to know is how happy it's made us, and how happy we are to see happy people when they come up here. And also just to know that it's just something that, like I said earlier, it's just not ever going to go away. We still have 2 Beatles, living, and so sad the day that we lose them. But this will forever be. It'll always live, forever live. And so I hope that whoever inherits it or shows interest in it will value it as much as we have. It's a forever, forever thing. I don't think, in all honesty, that there will ever be another group that comes close to being the Beatles.